I appreciate you joining us today. It is April 27th. Our reading today comes from the book of 2 Samuel. Yesterday we spoke about the account of David and Bathsheba and different things concerning that. But our reading today, if you're following along in the app or on the website, let's see, our reading actually starts in 2 Samuel 12, verse 26, as Joab fights against the people of Ammon. But then we quickly go to chapter 13, and it's the account of Amnon and Tamar, and more specifically, it starts getting into the account of Absalom. And of course, it's all intertwined. But we have the account of Amnon and Tamar, and remember Amnon, and let's just read it just for a second. After this, Absalom, the son of David, had a lovely sister whose name was Tamar. And Amnon, the son of David, loved her. Amnon was distressed over his sister Tamar, that became sick, for she was a virgin, and it was improper for Amnon to do anything with her. But Amnon had a friend whose name was Jonadab, the son of Shimeah, David's brother. Now Jonadab was a very crafty man. And he said to him, "Why are you, the king's son, becoming thinner day after day? Will you not tell me?" So Amnon said to him, "I love Tamar, my brother Absalom's sister." So Jonadab said to him, "Lie down on your bed, pretend to be ill, and when your father comes to see you, say to him, 'Please let my sister Tamar come and give me food, and prepare the food in my sight, that I may see it and eat it from her hand.'" And Amnon does exactly that, and if you're familiar with the account, you know what happens. Amnon ends up raping Tamar and sending her away. And it's just an absolutely horrible scene. As his hatred then, after he does what he does, and his hatred, verse 15, was greater than the love which he had for her. And he says to her, "Rise and be gone." And she goes and she laments what has happened. Absalom, her brother, says to her in verse 20, "Has Amnon your brother been with you? But now hold your peace, my sister. He is your brother. Do not take this thing to heart." Well, Absalom is certainly keeping it in his heart, because the next account, which happens, verse 23, "It came to pass after 2 full years, Absalom is going to end up having Amnon murdered." He's going to actually deceive his father, David, but he's going to arrange for it, that Amnon is in a certain place, and the order is going to be given, and Amnon is going to be killed. And David, of course, is not happy about the whole thing. Absalom flees to Geshur and was there 3 years, and David longed to go to Absalom, for he had been comforted concerning Amnon because he was dead. Now, chapter 14. Joab perceived that the king's heart was concerned about Absalom. So Joab gets a woman, a wise woman, verse 2, and has her put on an act to try to manipulate David into bringing Absalom back. And that's exactly what ends up happening. And David realizes it at a certain point. He actually says, basically, there in verse 19, "Is the hand of Joab with you in all this?" And the woman says, "Yep, that's how it's happened." So Absalom comes back, but David won't see him. And so Absalom is like, "Why have you brought me back?" And then Absalom starts having a little fit, and he goes and he sets Joab's field on fire. And Joab comes and says, "Why have you set my field on fire?" And Absalom says, "Why have you brought me back here? You won't come when I call for you." And so anyway, Joab finally goes to David, and the king and Absalom reconcile. And that's where our reading today ends. Let's back up to chapter 13, and let's just talk about this a little bit. And what we're going to talk about is we're going to talk about manipulation. We're going to talk about deception. Because in our reading today, it's interesting that you have 3 accounts of deception and manipulation. The first one is Amnon manipulating Tamar. And he lays down on his bed and he pretends to be sick, and David comes along, and David says, "Oh, what's wrong?" And he says, "Oh, I'm not feeling good. Send my sister Tamar. Have her come and have her make this food before me, and I'll feel better." And so Tamar does exactly that. And Amnon was just absolutely deceiving her, deceiving his father. And that's, as we think about what I wanted you to consider, was three reasons for deception. So why was Amnon doing this? The answer is pretty obvious: for his own pleasure. He wanted her. Talks about he loved her. He's going to end up hating her. But it's just about his own pleasures. Later on in the New Testament, remember what it says about Moses in Hebrews, that he talks about he forsook the house of Pharaoh. The passing pleasures of sin is the phrase. The passing pleasures of sin. And that's what Amnon was interested in, the passing pleasures of sin. And so he deceived. He deceived. He deceived the young girl. He deceived his father. And he was manipulating the situation for no other reason than his own pleasure. Then we move to Absalom. And Absalom, you have the whole account where he talks about the sheep shearers and all that. And David says, "Why do you want Amnon to go?" And 2 years has gone by, and David doesn't have a clue what's going on, but Absalom sure does. And he's manipulating the situation. He's deceiving people. He's giving them a lie because he wants Amnon in a certain place. Now, why is he deceiving people? He's not doing it for the passing pleasures of sin, at least not in the same way. He's doing it out of revenge. He wants Amnon dead. He wants Amnon dead. And all of this, they have same fathers but different mothers, is what all this is. But Absalom, he's out for blood. It's been 2 years, and Absalom hasn't forgotten it a bit. And when news finally gets back to David, and some of the men say, "Oh, well, he was doing this because of Tamar." You mean 2 years ago? Yeah, he hadn't forgotten. Absalom hadn't forgotten. Why do people deceive sometimes? Because they're out for blood. They're out for revenge. And that's Absalom. Now we come to our third deception, and this one was with Joab. And Joab asked that wise woman to give this line to David. She does a good job of it. And you think about Joab's motivation. Joab could see that David was missing his son, Absalom. So all this is happening. But it's a hard situation. But Joab is manipulating again. He's deceiving. He's manipulating. Now, why is he doing it? This is the odd one. Because you think about Joab's motivations, and surely it would be a good thing if David and Absalom reconciled. Surely it would be a good thing if the king kissed his son's head, and they were a happy family again. Surely it would be a good thing if Absalom came back into the fold, so to speak. Well, for tomorrow's reading, it's probably going to include, as you think about Absalom returning to Jerusalem, and this is all done again because Joab thought it was a good idea. Verse 33, when he called for Absalom, he came to the king and bowed himself on his face to the ground before the king. Then the king kissed Absalom. What a wonderful scene. Chapter 15 is Absalom's conspiracy. Absalom is going to stage a coup. And it's not going to be a good thing at all. Now, my point is simply this. We better be real careful about who we have fellowship with. Sometimes people they think that fellowship is such a good thing. They think that reconciliation is such a good thing. And you just have to be careful They're bringing Absalom back into the fold, but they're bringing a snake back. That's Absalom. He's a snake. And it's you're going to take this you take the snake to your bosom, and what ends up happening? You're the one who ends up getting bit, and David's going to end up getting bit. All because Joab thought it was a good idea, and he thought he could pull the strings, because that's what Joab does. And he's manipulating things, and he's deceiving. And Absalom comes back. And I'm not too sure it was a good thing. So you have Amnon deceiving, you have Absalom deceiving, you have Joab deceiving. All three deceiving, manipulating. And the lesson for us is just to be careful. Be careful. Hope this brief study has been helpful for you as we think about applications to our own lives. But I appreciate you following along with us. Hope you're having a good day. Hope you join us for our next study from God's Word.